Most of the chemists didn't know how many chemical elements are there on the Earth and their relationship. Dmitry Mendeleev had already made the famous periodic table of the chemical element, calculated the atomic quantity of elements, and showed us the relationship between them. The elements discovered later were all included in his table. The case has demonstrated everything in the universe has the order and laws. Some people say the universe is lawless and disorderly because they haven't found the laws and order. 宇宙的起源 2. Origin of the universe. All things within the time scope, including the celestial bodies and universe, have their origin, the birth time and process of development. The beginning and ending time of the universe, just as the and golden ratio, is mysterious and can't be reached by our wisdom. Compared with the wisdom of the greatest creator, our wisdom is just like a drop in the sea. I would like to share my knowledge of the beginning of the universe gained while my mind was in peace. When I am seeking what things in the universe are eternal, when I am thinking about the resurrection in the Bible, when I am meditating that the life is like a dream and all the four elements, earth, water, fire, and air of which the world is made, are void in the Buddhist scripture, when I am trying to figure out the source of Tao in the Tao Te Ching, when I ask myself why I would go to the mortal world, why we exist, and where we are going, I have known the beginning process of the universe. However, when I am delighted to think I have found the mystery of the universe, I suddenly realize that this mystery of the universe beginning was explained by the humans, the ancestors of Dragon Nation, 6,000 years ago. It is like an MT Everest climber. After reaching the peak after multiple difficulties, finds someone else has left his footprint on it. Thus, I am not bold enough to claim myself as the first one knowing the universe beginning. I only wish to add some details based on the wisdom of the past talents. The river diagram, the Book of Changes, and the Yellow Emperor's Book of Internal Medicine have told us the process of the universe beginning is Wuji generates Taiji, Taiji generates two polarities, the two polarities produce the four directions, the four directions create the eight. 3. Before the existing of the universe, it was Wuji. What is the state of Wuji? Wuji is the state of neither in nor out, neither big nor small, neither bound nor edge, neither null nor true, neither time nor space, neither material nor spirit. It is clear, chaos, everything and nothing. The detailed explanation of the state can't be completed even in a book containing 1 million words. I just want to stick to one point. According to the estimation of the paleontologists, the Earth was born about 4.5 billion years ago. Then where was the Earth before it was born? We can only conclude that it was in Wuji before it was born, just like the human beings. We were also in Wuji before we were born. Because the whole universe was in Wuji before it was born, Wuji contains everything. But where is Wuji? A thing without time, space, material, spirit, inside, outside, large size, small size, border, edge, firmness, or emptiness can only be described by the word shapeless and visionary. However, Wuji doesn't mean it contains nothing. Instead, it contains everything. It has nothing and everything at the same time. That's why the Diamond Sutra was profound and difficult to understand. For example, if Tathagata explains the laws, don't believe it. The laws can't be explained. If explained, they are not the laws or not the lawless. The Buddhism is no Buddhism. The name of Anagami is Bulai, but actually Bulai doesn't exist. So Anagami is called Anagami. The solemn Buddhist is not solemn. It is called the solemn. Tathagata says the world is not the world. So it is called the world. I should eliminate all life. After doing that, I found no life has been eliminated, and so on. If we don't know the origin of the universe, it is very difficult for us to understand the above Buddha words. If we can fully understand the above non-Buddha words, we will know the origin of the universe. Before everything was born, they were in Wuji. So Wuji means everything. We wish to take an example from the mythical novel Journey to the West to imagine the space in Wuji. Monk Tang and his apprentices entered the disguised monastery. The Monkey King was trapped in the gold symbol by the demon head. So how big or how small was this gold symbol? No matter how high or how low the Monkey King could transform himself, the symbol could change too following him. The Wuji space before the universe was born was in the state as the symbol. It was extremely large and extremely small. The space described in Einstein's general theory of relativity just refers to the space above mentioned. The size of the space is not decided by the energy. However, it is decided by the existence of matters. The more matters are transformed from the energy, the larger the space will be and vice versa. If there is no matter, there will no space. It's the same as the relationship between the Monkey King and the gold symbol. The space in the symbol is decided by the size of the Monkey King transforms himself. The traditional science believes that space is like a box and the material is a particle in the box. When the particle disappears, space is still there. Nevertheless, space is not like that. When the particle is not there, space will disappear. Space is determined by the distribution of particles. Space will twist, swell, contract, or even disappear as the material and its energy change the size. How to understand the time in Wuji? Time is generated by the movement of objects. There is no time without motion. For example, a man is 40 years old because the cells in his body are splitting, moving, and dying. If the cells were not moving or splitting, he would not have lived till 40. A piece of fresh meat will rot in a few days if placed open to the air in hot weather. However, if we put the meat in the fridge, it will not rot in months. Why? The meat in the fridge has slow, even halting cell movement. When the cell movement slows down, the time of the meat is lengthened. And when the cell movement stops, the time of the meat disappears. If a man is never born, does he still have time? If the earth is not born, does the earth have time? If the universe is not born, does the universe have time? No. This is the time in Wuji. The core of the quantum mechanics is the uncertainty. Why? The time does not lapse evenly. The time is changing. So how can you obtain this certainty? That's all about my explanation of Wuji. 4. Wuji generates Taiji. What is the state of Taiji? First, we have to know Taiji is generated from Wuji. Wuji is nothing and everything. It is everything because the energy existence in it can produce the material world. It is nothing because the energy in it is not material. It is chaos without firmness or emptiness. It is like the sky. When the sky is clear, there is nothing in it. But when it is cloudy, we can see the clouds and lightings and hear the thunders. Then there is everything. In Wuji, there is the intangible energy. The intangible energy, in contrast with the tangible energy, is moving irregularly. When the irregular movement, accidentally on a point, formed a specific order or symbol, the entire Wuji has formed a potential power arrow called the tornado, centered on this point. This potential power arrow, or tornado, is just called Taiji. Please note that the tornado is simply a momentum with only potential power. It does not have kinetic energy because it is not rotating. This is how Taiji is generated from Wuji. Taiji is in such a state. It is the one, amorphous, the unity without opposites, and an extremely large energy cluster. It is just like a locked reservoir containing billions of Pacific. The Taiji is just the greatest creator in common sense. In Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu said, chaos was born before there was the earth and heaven. Before the universe was born, something existed. This something is Taiji, the psychic energy of the greatest creator. Lao Tzu named this something as Tao because he confused the nature and psychic energy of the greatest creator. After understanding what Wuji is, we can understand Buddha and Buddhism. After understanding Taiji, we can understand Tao and Taoism. 5. Taiji creates the two polarities. What are the two polarities? It refers to the phenomenon of opposition. For instance, in the state of Taiji, everything is the one and amorphous. But in the state of the two polarities, the intangible energy is shown up in a tangible form. The sun, for example, is an energy cluster. It has been transformed from the intangible energy form in the state of Taiji into the tangible energy form. So the energy is classified into the tangible energy and intangible energy. None and existence form the two polarities, namely, the unity of opposites. The contents of the two polarities include none and existence, firmness and emptiness, yin and yang, positive and negative, static and dynamic, left and right, up and down, exterior and interior, front and rear, high and low, noble and humble, hard and soft, big and small, strong and weak, dark and light, male and female, rich and poor, fortunate and unfortunate, gain and loss, merit and fault, more and less, life and death, true and false, good and evil, beauty and ugly, etc. They are the unities of opposites. Everything in the universe, as we know, is the demonstrations of the two polarities. Then how are the two polarities were born out of the Taiji? We have known that the irregular movement of energy in Wuji accidentally formed a certain order. All the energy, in a short while, formed overwhelmingly an intangible potential energy. If the potential energy is not given out, it will only remain latent like a paper-made tiger. However, when all energies gather at the central point, the energy center has changed its nature, just like the water will evaporate when heated to a certain degree. At this time, the energy center, or the nucleus, is no longer a kind of energy. Instead, it has become a special structure surrounded by great energies. When this structure is complete, the consciousness comes into being. It is just like a fertilized egg without consciousness. When it keeps absorbing energy in its mother's uterus and improves its structure, a conscious animal, human, will be born. The gathering of mammoth energies has led to the alienation of the energy center, resulting in a structure. The constant improvement of the structure ended up with the emergence of the consciousness, which is the symbol of life, birth. The consciousness gathering all energies then started the process of creating the universe. And it is the greatest creator. After the greatest creator is born, the energy in the Taiji began to move around the greatest creator's consciousness. We can also say that all energies move around the structure of the energy center. Just like a human body, when your consciousness tells you to urinate, the bladder door is open and the urine goes out. When you want to look at the sky, your head will be raised and your eyes opened automatically. When you want to have sexual intercourse, your penis is erected. After the greatest creator is born, the two polarities come into being. The celestial bodies show up, the celestial movement begins, the unlimited space is born. The time starts and everything gets into the movement cycle of life and death. 6. The two polarities create the four directions. The two polarities have brought about the four directions. There is south, north, east, and west. There is front, rear, left, and right. There is life, growth, decline, and death. There is quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the function image. 7. The four directions create the 8 trigrams. Because there is south, north, east, and west, there are now 8 directions including the east, southeast, south, southwest, west, northwest, north, and northeast. The 8 directions are called Qian, Dui, Li, Jian, Sun, Kan, Jin, and Kuren respectively, forming the 8 trigrams. Each direction has its special meaning. Each direction has its different chance changes. Let's take a person as an example. If he remains healthy in the south, he might find it difficult to get accustomed to the north. If nothing goes smooth in the east, he may achieve success in the west, and the ugly duckling might become the white swan. Even grass will have different growth model and blossoming timing in different directions and locations. 8. The permutation and combination of the 8 trigrams, Qian, Dui, Li, Jian, Sun, Kan, Jin, and Kuren, produce the 64 trigrams. The 64 trigrams are corresponding to the 64 factors in the universe. But as to the details of these 64 factors, because they are related to all the mysteries in the universe and hidden to the common people, even the King Wen of Zhou in the canonization of the gods didn't know all of them. And the most achieved Taoists in China only knew a few of the factors. Sakyamuni masters half of them, and Jesus only knows a few more than Sakyamuni does. We often hear people say, no disclosure of the heaven secrets. The heaven secrets are just hidden in the 64 trigrams. The permutation and combination of the 64 trigrams have caused the birth and death of all things in the universe. The things that you can't imagine are just the combination of two factors. The power of Jesus lies in his mastery of the formula of these factors. The birth and death of all things, the limitless mysteries and all changes and movements in the universe are hidden in the permutation and combination formula of these 64 trigrams. No coming, no going, the time-space ends and origin shows up. This is the brief process of the birth of the universe. 2. 宇宙概述 Overview of the universe. 写 The universe is the order. The universe exists as the order and remains relatively stable with the total energies reaching zero. The definition of the universe. The space with the negative and positive energies reaching zero is called the universe. Or the space with the balanced matter and antimatter is called the universe. The shape and structure of the universe. The universe is called the large universe and small universe. The borderless one is called the large universe, and the one with borders is called the small universe. The large universe is made up of numerous small universes. Pi equals 3.14159.2653589. It is the symbol of the large universe, which is limitless, no cycling, endless, vast, and eternal. The small universe is the relatively secluded and independent galaxy space in the large universe, like the swirls in the river. Each swirl is a relatively independent rotating space. It's also like the eggs in a henhouse in which each egg is an independent and secluded space. The Earth we live on is in a small universe. We might as well call this universe the Earth universe to distinguish it from the other small universes. The Earth universe is a saucer-shaped Taiji oval with its edge covered by a layer of high-energy clouds. The layer of high-energy clouds is the crust of the Earth universe. At the same time, it functions like the stator of a motor. It is a rotating magnetic field, pushing the things on the Earth universe to rotate counterclockwise. The structure of the Earth universe is an oval-shaped rotating object composed of yin and yang, the two meshing revolvers, just like the Taiji diagram of Taoism in China. The difference is that the Taiji diagram is a circle while the Earth universe is a Taiji oval body. We call the Taiji oval body the low rotary galaxy, in which there are almost 3,000 rotary river galaxies. Each rotary river galaxy is a relatively independent rotating one. In each rotary river galaxy, there are almost 3,000 Milky Way systems, with each containing almost 3,000 solar systems. The rotating rate of each celestial body and galaxy seems to be constant, but the fact is that the rate is changing all the time. Each celestial body, when is on the short axis, the rotating speed reaches the maximum. The farther it is from the short axis, the slower it rotates. When reaching the two ends of the long axis, the celestial body will halt for a short time, on which moment all the physical life on the celestial body will die. The spiritual body of the dead life will enter the negative pole of the Taiji oval body, which is called one kalpa. After passing the long axis, the spiritual body will get out of the negative pole of the Taiji oval body and enter the positive pole in the form of the physical life. Because the celestial bodies and galaxies have different mass, they stay on the long axis for different periods of time. So they are in permutation and combination again. For example, the Earth, in the next cycle, might become a desert land like the Mars, which might be full of life like the Earth. The spatial distance between celestial bodies and galaxies is also in constant change. The closer they are to the short axis, the more distance they will have. The universe seems to be expanding. The closer it stays to the long axis, the less distance it will have. It seems that the universe is shrinking. At present, the Milky Way system is now floating towards the short axis. The Earth universe is classified into the positive universe and negative universe. The positive universe. The sickle world is the positive universe. All the matters, tangible, seeable, touchable, hearable, perceptible, and those that can be measured by the instruments belong to the scope of the positive universe. The dark matters and energies are also classified into the scope of positive universe. For instance, the house, desk, plant, animal, human body, cloud, wind, thunder, lightning, sound, odor, molecule, atom, electron, ion, proton, neutron, nucleon, meson, hyperon, barytron, antiparticle, light ray, gravitation, magnetic force, infrared ray, ultraviolet ray, cathode ray, positive ray, ultrasonic wave, infrasonic wave, biowave. The noise caused by the high and low frequency oscillation, diffusive substances emitted by the radioactive elements such as radium, uranium, plutonium, and francium, and the universal gravitation all belong to the scope of the positive universe. All things existing in the universe in the form of elementary particles are matters. The physical world is the world that can be explained and will be explained by the science. The scope can be explained by the science belongs to the scope of matters. The scope that can't be explained by the science belongs to the superstitious scope not accepted by the people. When science tries to explain the things beyond the material world, it is not science anymore. Instead, it is called the anti-science or superscience. All the religions and the superstitious things are the superscience that stands against the science. The negative universe. The anti-world is the negative universe. All the supermatters, intangible, and others that can't be seen, heard, touched, measured, or felt but affect the material world all belong to the scope of the negative world. For instance, the universal repulsion, time, space, spirit, consciousness, thinking, soul, life soul, belong to the non-materials. The belief, Tao, law, order, spell, and Buddhism belong to the non-materials. The angel, God, ghost, Buddha, devil, and other amorphous life are the non-materials. The dream scene, origin of the spiritual feeling, the bridge of the telepathy, the passage of the thinking telepathy, the paradise, the hell, Allah, ancestor of the Buddha, Yahweh and their residences, the zero world, the heaven world, the venue of the gods, and the Elysium where the spiritual body goes to after the dies all belong to the scope of the negative universe. The fantasy is no fantasy, and the reality is no reality, and the seeable is not usable, and the usable is not seeable, as believed by the Taoists belong to the scope of the negative universe. All energies and energy groups that do not exist in the universe in the form of the elementary particles are the antimatters. The positive universe can be explained by the science and is easy to be understood. The negative universe, till now, can only be felt by the people not very clearly. It can't be explained by the science and is difficult to understand. The negative universe is the anti-world. The negative universe is the origin of the matters. The material world is the reflection of the anti-world and image of the negative universe. Everything in the material world is in constant movement and change. They have birth and death. On the contrary, everything in the negative world exists in the relatively eternal state. The law of the universe, the unity of the opposites. Everything in the universe exists in unity of opposites, such as yin and yang, positive and negative, man and woman, male and female, front and rear, exterior and interior, high and low, up and down, firmness and emptiness, glory and shame, static and dynamic, noble and humble, weak and strong, rich and poor, merit and fault, fortunate and unfortunate, gain and loss, forward and backward, more and less, day and night, past and future, tangible and intangible, life and death. Each pair depends on each other. Without one, the opposite one will not exist. The unity of the opposites is the presentation of the universe nature. However, it is a major law of the universe existence. The negative is there because of the positive, and the universal repulsive force is there because of the universal gravitation. It is the same with the matter and antimatter, particle and non-antiparticle, photon and antiphoton, energy and negative energy, the left rotation and right rotation, in the mortal world and the fairy world. You can find the black where you find the white and the male where you find the female. It is the same with the life and death, flesh and soul, paradise and hell, law and lawless, chaos and peace. When the whole society is seeking wealth, there must be some people seeking knowledge. When the whole society is at peace, some force must be preparing for the riot. When all the human beings face the disaster because they have violated the God's orders, the representatives sent by the God and Buddha will help them to wake up. The extremely dynamic will lead to the static, and vice versa. The movement of the universe. The movement of the large universe is initiated and operated by the structure in the Taiji Energy Cluster Center. That is to say, it is initiated and operated by the consciousness of the greatest creator. The small universe, where the Earth lies in, is fueled by the hull of the Earth universe, which is a rotating magnetic field belt. In the universe, there are two groups of energies with the opposite nature, like the action and the reaction. They have the different power but reverse directions. So the total energy stands at zero. These two groups of energies are the Buddhist power, maintaining the orderly operation, stability, and balance of the universe. If we add these two groups of energies, we will get zero. However, when either group is more powerful than the other, the universe will disappear immediately. For instance, the universal gravitation and the universal repulsive force have the same power and opposite movement directions. Because the total is zero, the solar system, the Milky Way system, the low rotary system, and rotary river system move in an orderly way. If there is only the universal gravitation without the universal repulsive force, all the celestial movement in the universe will become the direct line movement and join together in the ultra-light speed. So the universe will disappear immediately. If there is only the universal repulsive force without the universal gravitation, there will not be the rotations of the celestial bodies in the universe. The Earth will not move around the Sun, and all the celestial movement will become the direct line movement. The celestial bodies will expand rapidly at the ultralight speed. In the end, they will burn and die, and the universe will disappear, too. In the human society, the science and superstitious are also two groups of energies with equal power and mutual repulsion with total zero energy. There is no science without the superstitious, and vice versa. These two forces constrain each other and move forward together. The more developed the science is, the more active the superstitious activities will become, because the science will prove that the superstitious is not superstitious at all. Instead, it is the superscience. On the other hand, the more powerful the superstitious is, the more developed the science will be, because the superstitious will expand the scope of the science. The science and the superstitious is a unity of the opposites. The science finds it impossible to eliminate the superstitious, which also finds it impossible to eliminate the science. The positive universe is levorotation and the negative universe is dextrorotation. The point for understanding the universe. The correct understanding of the universe will help us build the correct universe concept, world concept, and life concept. When we gradually know about the negative universe, there are fewer mysteries left behind for the world. We will know our past and future, Buddha, Buddhism, Tao and Taoism, Jesus, and the greatest creator. We can face the death and the life sufferings peacefully. In particular, when have made self-improvement and self-refinery to a certain degree, see the thousand-year world, 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world, we will long for them, just like those people live in the poor countries suddenly see what the developed countries are like in TV. We will know what we should do, and will discover the value and mysteries in the life Chanyuan. You might think that the 10,000-year world hundreds of thousands of light years away is much too far away. But the distance is just one step. People living a few hundred years ago used to think that there was a long distance between the Cape of Good Hope and San Francisco of the States. But today we know it will only take us 2 days to get there. And instant reaching can be achieved via telephone or internet. When we have dreams, the spiritual human body gets out of the flesh body and reaches his friends or relatives far away in a short distance. Even, the spiritual body can follow the time axis to meet with the deceased friends or relatives. For the spiritual bodies, there is no distance of time and space. When we have developed into the spiritual bodies of the celestial beings, it is an easy task to travel through time-space. The universe is our home. The earth is just a point in the home, a temporary hotel. The chapter of time. The meaning of time. Xiefeng. The time is a recorder of the motion of matters. Time rises from motion. There will be no time without the motion. The time exists within all the moving matters and is spread in all the material universe space. The time is antimatters. We can't see, touch, listen, measure, catch, seize, store, borrow, or debit the time. Time is intangible. It can be described but not depicted. The time only exists in the material world. There is no time in the anti-world, the negative universe, just like the thunder and lightning only existing in the clouds. If the sky is clear, there will be no thunder or lightning. The time is both positive and negative. The future time is positive and the past time is negative. The time is universal or specific. The universal feature applies to the whole while specific feature applies to the individual. We pick up 2 mature pears from the tree and place one in the open air and the other in the fridge. 5 days later, The pear in the open air has rotten while the one in the fridge is still fresh. From the universal point of view of the time, these two pears both last 5 days, or 120 hours. But from the perspective of the specific feature of the time, one day for the pear in the open air is more than 24 hours, while one day for the one in the fridge is less than 24 hours, or even 1 hour. Time is variable. In different spaces, time is different. The humans regulates that one rotation of the Earth is a day, and one revolving of the Earth around the Sun is a year. One revolving of the Moon around the Earth is a month, lunar calendar. One day contains 24 hours, and each hour has 60 minutes. The regulations have given convenience to the human activities, and the whole world can work and rest regularly in the same time system. The above calculation is made on the premise that the certain object on the Earth remains still. For the objects in motion, the time is a variable. For instance, you take a spaceship and fly to the east. According to the traveling speed of the spaceship, you will spend less than 24 hours a day. The faster the speed is, the less the time you spend. If the spaceship has the same speed as the Earth rotation, one day has 24 hours for you. If the spaceship flies to the west and exceeds the speed of the Earth rotation, the one day of yours is more than 24 hours. If the one day of yours has 240 hours, it has 2,400 hours for the people living on the Earth. If you maintain the movement state, you will not feel the existence of time. 50 years later, when you come back to the Earth, you will find your friends in childhood have all become elderly while you are still a young man. Different locations have different time. What we mean by New York time, Beijing time, London time, etc. account for the above statement. Different zones also have different time. The tropical and the frigid zones have different time. If one person is frozen in the ice, he will have unlimited time. If one man stays in an extremely thermal environment, his time will be shortened. Meanwhile, the time on the sea and the time on the mountain are also different. Different mass has different time. The greater the mass is, the longer life it will have, and vice versa. For the objects with the same size, the diamond has longer life than other stones, wood, and clouds. For the objects with the same mass, the larger they are, the shorter time they will have. The time of 1 kilo meat is shorter than that of 1 kilo stone. For the people with the same weight, the higher he is, the shorter time he will have. The time of the people living on the Earth is longer than that of those living on the Moon. For instance, a man who can live 80 years on the Earth can only live 30 years on the Moon. Different universe spaces have different time. The time on the Moon is different from that on the Earth. The time on the Earth is different from that in the Sun. The man who can live 100 years on the Earth can live 1,000 years in the 1,000-year world and 30,000 years in the 10,000-year world. The main reason is that the Earth, the 1,000-year world planet, and the 10,000-year world planet have different mass. The so-called one day in the heaven equals 1 year in the mortal world is because they are in different spaces. The time can be expanded or compressed. The higher speed the objects have, the more compressed the time will be, and vice versa. For instance, two people start from the same line and walk towards the same goal. He who walks faster will reach the goal. His time has been compressed. The other one just walks slowly, stopping at times, picking up gravels on the ground, touching the grass, saying hell to the bird and bye-bye to the cloud. He will reach the goal later. His time has been expanded. The time of life. Because life is composed of matters, flesh body, and antimatters, spiritual body. The time has two meaning for the life, too. For the flesh body of the life, time is eternal. That is to say, the flesh body of the life will have the process of birth, growth, aging, and death. No power can stop the process. The humans can't have the eternal time. But the spiritual body of the life is antimatter, which is not limited or constrained by the time and can cycle in the limitless space. For the flesh body, the time is vertical and composed of the past, present, and the future. For the spiritual body, the time is horizontal. From either point of the life, the spiritual body can enter the horizontal time, going beyond life and death and entering the eternal time-space. In the virtual function image, x-axis represents the time attributes in the scope of matters, while z-axis stands for the time attributes in the scope of antimatters. X-axis is vertical and the z-axis is horizontal. X-axis only travels in the space of the past, present, and future. And the z-axis can get out of the constraint of the present in a short time and enter another space. So we can conclude that when a person dies, only his flesh body dies. The spiritual body of his life follows the axis at the time point of his death, entering another time space and starting a new life in it. 3. The surmounting of time. Perception and surmounting. Perception. Time changes everything. Time is the key factor to the deformation of objects. The mountain 1,000 years ago was different from what it is today. The river 100 years ago was not the same as it is like today. The person 10 years ago is different from what he is today. It is the same with the tree, flower, moth, cloud, meat, spark, and thunder. Without the movement, there is no time. If there is no orbiting of the Earth around the Sun, there is no such time as the year. If there is no Earth rotation, there is no such time as the day. If there is no revolving of the Moon around the Earth, there is no such time as the month. And there will not be minute, hour, or second. The time will be zero. So without movement, there will be no time. Without the time, everything will be eternal. As far as the object relativity is concerned, when two objects have the same running speed, the time between them is zero. When the Moon revolves around the Earth at the same speed with the Earth rotation, there will be no month. When the Earth revolves around the Sun at the same speed of the light speed, the time in the universal meaning will disappear. Or we say the time in the narrow definition stops while the time in the broad definition still exists and affects the life on the Earth. As far as the objects themselves are concerned, the faster they move, the quicker the time runs and the shorter life they have, and vice versa. For instance, there are two cars, A and B. Car A drives at 120 kilometers per hour and car B at 60 kilometers. Contrasted with other objects, these two cars all run 1 hour. But for car A, the time is 2 times more than car B. If car B is scrapped in 10 years' time, car A will be scrapped in 5 years. For humans, excluding other factors, and we only focus on the impact of speed on human life, the people who do things slowly and orderly will live longer than those always living in a hurry and with efficiency. The late maturing kids will have longer life than the early mature kids. The shepherds live longer than the athletes. The nuns live longer than the prostitutes. And Taoists live longer than the worldly people. Time changes everything. And everything exists in the specific time. To attain eternal existence for an object, we must make the time eternal where it exists. Time determines everything. In the scope of time, everything is empty and illusion. You work hard persistently, but what are you creating? As a matter of fact, you are pursing the illusion. Does the Roman Empire still exist now? Who can remember the name of your grand-grandfather? Some people might think that your merits will be written in the history and your name will be admired by generations of people. But the fact is that the Earth will one day perish when it moves to the long axis of the Earth universe. Or several hundred years later, the human society will have fundamental changes and your merits will turn to dust and ashes. Who will mourn you every day? Please stop the narcissism and self-cheating. The positive time ages the objects while the negative time returns the objects from old age to the young age. Looking into the future, we will become older. Looking back to the past, we become younger. Follow the time, we become mortal. Reversing the time, we become the celestial beings. For the material world, the time is eternal. For the human beings, the time is short because we are not able to gain the eternal existence in the material world. The short life, for us, is valuable. We are wasting our time if we focus on seeking the material benefits instead of on seeking the surmounting of time in the limited life. Though the life is short, we must learn how to use our time. If we don't know the mysteries of the universe and the essence of life, our life will be bitter, misery, and unhappy even if we live 1,000 years. Surmounting. The movement of polarities. On the one hand, the time only exists in the material world. Time generates from the motion of matter. There will be no time without the motion of matter. The food and vegetables stored in the fridge can be kept long because their motion has been greatly reduced. If a car drives 10,000 kilometers a year, it will be scrapped 30 years later. However, if it drives 30,000 kilometers a year, I will be scrapped in 1 year. If a man works hard day and night, ponders day and night, seeks the immediate interest, desires for things eagerly, and finds it difficult to control his temper, he will have shorter life. If he has peaceful mind and peaceful life, he will have longer life, thus surmounting the time. On the other hand, because the anti-world has no time, we will make full use of the antimatter energy to break through the limit and constraint of the time. The spirit, consciousness, thinking, belief, and soul of human beings are all the antimatters. If we live in the world of these antimatters, time will have no impact on us and we can surmount it. The spirit, consciousness, thinking, belief, and soul of humans are connected with the whole negative universe, the anti-world. The achievement will be made by your thinking, by Shui Binyi. The art of application lies in the heart, by Taoists. Tao abides in non-action, yet nothing is left undone, by Lao Tzu. Mind rises from no certain things. By Sakyamuni, the richness lies in the heart rather than the worldly belongs. By Muhammad, your heart is where your treasures are. Jesus, we will go where our heart is. Only by understanding the meaning of the above words, we can surmount the time and reach eternality. 2. Go against the time. What is going against the time? We see the time as a train, and we are sitting on the train. The train moves forward, and we run backward. When our speed is the same as that of the train, the time halts, or we stop the aging. If we run backward faster than the train, we have entered the negative time and can become younger. The speed we talk about is not the speed in the material world. If understand it with the speed of the material world, we can never run faster than the time. Going against the time is just boating upstream. For the common people, it is difficult because people live in the material world and their tongue, mouth, eyes, and nose are manipulated by the materials. In particular, they are heavily constrained by the worldly society, such as the money, fame, beauty, power, the burden of sustaining the elderly and the family, and the daily affairs. And going against the time violates the natural laws, which is an almost impossible task for the common people. They don't understand it and have no time to practice it. If doing improperly, they will suffer from heavy losses, able to handle their daily affairs or attain the younger age. Going against the time is a reverse approach of thinking of senior level. It is quite suitable for the self-improving people in the Buddha and Tao temples. Considering the acceptance of the worldly society, I will not explain it in details. If we are destined to meet, I will explain it to you face to face. Time is impartial to everything in the universe. Hope Allah, ancestor of Buddha, Yahweh, and the greatest creator will bless you so that you can surmount the time. The movement of polarities and going against the time are to lengthen the life so that you have enough time to refine and improve yourself, change the life track and develop your life into the structure in the higher level. When the flesh body dies, the spiritual body of our life and enter a completely new world along the z-axis and through the time-space. Kongjian Qian, the chapter of space. Dao Yin Yu. Introduction. Xiefeng. Till now, humans are familiar with only one side of the space. Namely, they only know the space of the material world and don't understand the space in the anti-world. We falsely believe that only the environment on the Earth is suitable for human living. And after landing on the moon and taking photos of the Mars, we are, after short time excitement, sad to feel that the neighbors of the Earth are not suitable for human living, and it is an impossible task to reach the more distant planets. Tragedies happen frequently due to our knowledge shortage of the negative universe. Our confusion about the future has limited our vision within the present time and current life. All of life we live in hurry, worry, and tension, neglecting the life value and meaning and mess our life which should have been beautiful. The science and technology has been developing rapidly, such as the virtual space of internet, nanometer technology, cloning, genetic code and decoding, hypertelescopic photos of the outer space, and applications of atomic and ionic energy. The development should have stimulated the human thinking and led us to know the antimatters, negative space, the life meaning, and the establishment of a brand new value system, giving us a better, easier, and more enlightened life. Nevertheless, the achievements in science and technology have strengthened the people's consciousness of material existence, hindered us from probing into the negative universe, made the people busier, more nervous, and worried. The relationship between humans and the society is closer. The relationship between humans themselves are more intensified. The human freedom is much reduced. People are kept farther away from their natural attributes and closer to the robotic features. The human beings are now on an accelerating train without brakes. Even those old farmers living in the most distant areas have to take the express train whether they are willing or not. The driving force of the train comes from the human beings, but the biorobots will drive and manage the train, mechanizing all the people on it. We find it difficult to understand the negative space and think it belongs to the unreliable metaphysics. In fact, when our wisdom is upgraded to a certain degree, we can see it. The human eyes can only see the light rays ranging between 400 millimeters and 700 millimeters length, and human ears can only hear the sound ranging between 20 and 20,000 hertz frequency. There is no water in the middle of the sea swirls. The center of the hurricane is at great peace. So we can't conclude those we can't see do not exist, or those we can't hear are silent. Everyone has dreams. Are you really there in your own dream? If not, why do you have consciousness in the strange dream environment with desires and emotions? If yes, then who is the guy lying on the bed? So the sleeping person on the bed and the moving person in the dream are all you. The only difference is that you are in different spaces. The space in the dream is the negative space. There are many negative spaces in the universe, and dream space is only one of them. We need to understand the concept of space by using the ideas of Sakyamuni and Einstein's theory of relativity. Sakyamuni said, "In a tiny dust, there are many limitless Chahai worlds. In the worlds, there are dusts too. And in these dusts, there are also many worlds, and the process repeats. Chahai represents the world, and the tiny dust stands for the universe. For instance, 1 nanometer, compared with a grain of sand, is just a tiny dust. Compared with the Earth, a grain of sand is a tiny dust. Compared with the Milky Way system, the Earth is a tiny dust. Compared with the Earth universe, the Milky Way system is a tiny dust. With the large universe, the Earth universe is a tiny dust." Einstein once said, "Relativity space is endowed with physical qualities. In this sense, therefore, there exists an ether. The non-materials are the contrast of the materials. The negative space is the opposite of the space. The celestial beings are the contrast of the human beings. The intangible life is the opposite of the tangible life. A leaf, a water drop, and a sand grain are all a mammoth world. A silicon chip of 1 square mm can store all the books in a large library. An electrical pulse of a frequency can carry numerous things. A human body includes 130 trillion lives. A sand grain can hold thousands of villages. For a life body that can only be seen under an electron microscope, humans are the giants. For a human being, the Earth as a living life body is a titanic giant. However, when the time-space changes, 100 million people can live on a grain of sand and will not feel crowded. In different spaces, the life has their distinctive living conditions and food system. We can never understand the living conditions and food systems of the people living in another time-space based on our own. At the same time, we cannot regard those living in another time-space have the same height or weight as we do. You might think I am just talking about nonsense when I tell you that you can live on the planet several million light years away. That's because you don't understand the negative universe speed. So what is the negative universe speed? It is the moving speed of the antimatters. For example, a person working at the Antarctic workstation misses his hometown very much. His thinking can immediately go to his hometown. Though his body is still in the Antarctic, his thinking and consciousness is in the hometown. This is the negative universe speed. For the sake of understanding, I assume the negative universe speed at 1 light year per second. The actual speed is faster than that. When we enter the space tunnel, we go at the negative universe speed. 空间的含义, the meaning of the space. 写法, the locations where the matters and antimatters are, and their movement scope are called the space. The space is decided by the material existence and distribution. The negative space is determined by the non-material existence and distribution. There will be no space without the materials, and there will be no negative space without the non-materials. The space includes absolute and relative spaces. The absolute space refers to the space that can expand unlimitedly. The relative space refers to the space between an object and the surrounding objects. The spaces are everywhere all the time. There is space between the galaxies and between the atoms. The space also includes the negative and positive spaces. The space where the materials exist is called the positive space. The space where the non-materials exist is called the negative space. The human bodies exist in the positive space, while the spiritual bodies exist in the negative space. The positive space twists, swells, contracts, or disappears with the size of the object's mass, energy, and forms. It is a relatively stable space. The negative space changes abruptly and has limitless changes in a short while. The space can change the forms and movement laws of objects. The different spaces decide the different movement laws and forms of the objects. For instance, the figure of the people living in the frigid zones is different from that of those living the tropical environment. The urban people have different looks from those living in the rural areas, the fishermen and the shepherds. The growth model, blossoming and fruiting timing of the grass in the deserts are different from those living the forest or highlands. The monkeys in the scenic areas have different capability of survival from those living in the forests. The men who get along with women for a long time have different tempers and personality with those staying longer with the other men. The mentality and behavior between businessmen and priests are different. The people working in the temples have different thinking from those working for the government. The space change can arouse the people's change in physical function, thinking ways, and mentality. The disease contracted in the cold and moist regions will get cured automatically in the warm and dry zones. The disease contracted in cities will get cured in the rural areas. The people having average performance will achieve great success when transferred to another place. The low-rank government official might make a great deal of money if doing business. The space change often leads to the change of situations. If one wants to change his life, he has to change the activity space. Otherwise, he will die without any change or progress. The space is changing. It can be expanded, compressed, or twisted. When the mass of one object is equal to that of another object, the space between them is in linear arrangement. When they are not equal, the space between them will be expanded, compressed, twisted, and arranged in the form of an umbrella or rotation. When the mass of an object, we can call it the energy, is bigger than the total of the surrounding object's mass, energy, the space between them is the linear stable space and the object is the mass center of the space. For the small mass objects, the space distance between the small mass objects and this big quality, high energy, object is expanded. However, for the high energy object, the space distance has been compressed. Contrary to the negative space, the big mass object, the space between the big mass object and the small mass objects has been expanded. For the small mass objects has been compressed. So for the genuine Christians' followers, Yahweh and Jesus just stay beside them, influencing their words and behaviors at all times. For Yahweh and Jesus, the Christians are staying distantly and the non-Christians even farther. The Muslims and Allah Muhammad, the Buddhists and Sakyamuni, the Taoists and Original Heaven Lord and Lao Tzu have the same space relationship. A bosom friend afar brings a distant land near. The space distance of thousands of km has been compressed into the wall-like distance. This is for the low-energy people only. For the high-energy people, even if you are standing in front of him, he feels you are far away at the other end of the world. This is why the people with the highest energy feel the loneliest. Even if they are standing in a chaotic market, they feel isolated and mournful. 36维空间, 36-dimensional spaces. According to the level of the life mass energy of matters and antimatters, there are 36 dimensions in the spaces. They are colorless space, double color space, mortal world, cause-effect space, between yin and yang space, human celestial being space, proton space, photon space, light speed circle, super light space circle, molecule world, micro world, law world, retention information space, supertime space, macro world, time tunnel, holographic order world, zero world, heaven world, Elysium world, cathode black hole body, 10,000-year world, 1,000-year world, dream world, anode black hole world, livestock world, animal world, plant world, insect world, bacteria world, landscape and climate world, hell world, frozen layer and inflamed world. 一维空间无色间. One-dimensional space, colorless space. It is a space where we can't see the size, form, or color of the objects. Living in this space, we are just like the blind. The polar nights or the polar rights belong to the colorless space. The Taiji space before the universe is born is a one-dimensional space. For the humans, the anti-world is a one-dimensional space. All the antimatters are one-dimensional in nature. That's why we can't see the consciousness, thinking, soul, Buddha, celestial being, Tao, law, heaven world, Elysium world, dream world, hell world, frozen layer or inflamed layer. From the perspective of the one-dimensional space of the antimatters, all of us human beings are the blind people. We can't see things in this space, just like the blind people who can't see the beautiful flowers and other things in this world. We see nothing and have on knowledge of the antimatter one-dimensional space. 二维空间双色间 two-dimensional space, the double color space. In this space, the objects have sizes and forms, but they only have the light and shade colors. For instance, the achromatopsia people live in the double color space. The scenes in the hell world, frozen layer and inflamed layer, are just like the images in black and white TV with only light and shade colors. If one person judges things only by good and bad, true and false, good and evil, and beauty and ugly, instead of seeing the bad and the good and the bad, the false and the true and the false, the good and the evil and the beauty and the ugly and the beauty, the static and the dynamic and the static, his thinking would be the achromatopsia thinking, and he actually lives in the two-dimensional world. The space which only has the direct lines without curves, and the direct lines have no obliquity from the perspective of either primary vision, overlook, or sectional view is the two-dimensional space. 三维空间人间 three-dimensional space, mortal world. In this space, substances have forms and sizes are rich in colors. The space is constantly changing. The mortal world is a three-dimensional space. 98% of the human population and most of the animals, except the birds, live in this space. The three-dimensional space is a knotless space. The movement of all matters is a knotless line, just like a rope fastened to a person's foot. No matter how many turns he or she makes, no matter which direction he or she goes, though the rope has many twists or pile into a geometric pattern, it will become a straight when we pull the two ends of it. And there is no knot in this line. The three-dimensional space is a relatively simple and v space. It is a space where we live without making efforts. 四维空间因果间 four-dimensional space, the karma space. It is the thinking space where we can know the karma relationship. The human beings walk in the three-dimensional space while the birds fly in the four-dimensional space. The flight route of the birds can have knots. So the four-dimensional space is the knotted space. From the perspective of the three-dimensional space, we can only see the part of the tree above the ground. However, from the perspective of the four-dimensional space, we can see the tree roots under the ground. Based on the material changes in the mortal world, we can see through the phenomenon and detect the essence of things, the relationship between them, the interactive bridges, and the causes of the changes. We can also see through a certain phenomenon and find the future results. We can know the principle of quantitative and qualitative changes. We know how to achieve balance. We can find the truth out of the routine phenomena. We can find the thinking space of the laws. For instance, we can perceive the universal gravitation when seeing the apple falling to the ground. We can think about the movement rules and direction of the universe when seeing the vine growing in spirals. We can reach the knowledge about the terrestrial magnetism and ocean currents when we see the swirls formed by releasing the water out of the bathtub. We can know the function of the motion power when we see the kettle lid jumping as the water boils. We can perceive the irrigation and power generation when seeing the wind and tides. We can know about the disease and disease-spreading ways when we see the bacteria under the microscope. We can get the mystery of the genes when we see the different forms of the objects. We can conclude the life origin from the gene invariants and genetic features. We can know about a person's health and personality when see his complexion and face. We can predict a person's future success or failure when seeing his behaviors and listening to his words. We can see the rise and fall of a dynasty by observing the dedication of the government officials and the mentality of the civilians. Those living in the four-dimensional space include the greatest scientists such as Newton, Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Euclid, Copernicus, Mendel, Heisenberg, Kepler, Dalton, Röntgen, Mendeleev, Planck, Pasteur, the political leaders such as Washington, Mao Zedong, Constantine the Great, Peter the Great, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Augustus, and Caesar, the musicians such as Beethoven, Handel, and Bach, the philosophers such as Aristotle, Plato, and Bacon. 五维空间阴阳两界间 five-dimensional between yin and yang space. It is the rim space and the crossing between the matters and antimatters and between the space and the negative space. Three types of people find it easy to enter this space. The first type is the specialists in a field. When one person is addicted to or reaches the peak in the study of one issue or one thing, he feels, though not very clearly, the existence of supermaterials. Sometimes he feels he can't find the interconnection bonds between the things in the actual world. Sometimes he feels that something happens in an incredible way. For instance, why the people who have dug the tombs of the Egyptian pharaoh die a natural death? Why did one of the twins feel worried at the same moment when his brother died from the traffic accident thousands of miles away? Why could the girl called Shani Devi, born in Delhi of India in 1926, tell exactly the things in her former cycle of life, which proved to be true? Why was the coffin of famous American actor Charles Cleveland, who died in 1899 and buried in Galveston of Texas, brought into the sea by the tides, floating 28 years and 3,000 kilometers before reaching his hometown, the Prince Edward Island? These things have made him feel that the things he used to study were much too trivial and insignificant. He still can't tell what's true and what's false when faced with the matters and antimatters. All things seem to the reality and the fantasy at the same time. If his flesh body dies now, his spiritual body will be in the state of puzzlement. Though his flesh body has died, the spiritual body of his can't find the way out and can only roam in the edgy place when the material world is connected with the non-material world. The second type is those who practice or improve himself blindly. Due to the wrong method, too much hurry, old age, or bad health, the spiritual body after the death of the flesh body can only drift in the connection place of the yin and yang worlds. The third type is those who feel like getting into the unnecessary end, or those who died suddenly at their golden age. Because they are not well prepared for death and still long for the material world, they are not willing to be brought to another world by the sudden death. Some of their wishes haven't been realized and they are reluctant to leave the material world. However, because their flesh bodies are dead, the spiritual bodies have no carrier and can only roam for a certain time in the connection space between yin and yang worlds. Some cases of spirit possession are caused by their spiritual bodies. The people who are not willing to die would stay in this space. In the rural areas, the monks or yin-yang masters will help to release the souls of the dead people. The ceremony is just to comfort them, encourage, and persuade them to enter the yin world and forget about the things in the yang world. 六维空间人仙界 six-dimensional space, the humans and celestial beings world. This space is where the people having got out of the material world constraint live. When a person's belief is perfect innocent and he or she is not seduced by the worldly materials, they just look the same with the average people. But their inner part has been changed. They have known the negative universe is the origin of the matters. Everything in the three-dimensional world is simply the fantasy. The worldly people will get nothing even if they are busy working and struggling all the time. The people will end up in a dream and they are ignorant. The people in this space don't have to work to get something. They work for pleasure, not means of making a living. They have known the Holy Spirit, Buddhism, and Taoism. They know how to make use of the energy in the negative universe to serve them. Basically, they can make achievement by thinking about them. So they are free of the worries and live an unloaded life. Except for the human celestial beings whose flesh bodies are still alive because of their self-refinery and self-improvement, the few mages, Taoists, Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and the believer of other regions can also enter this space. 七维空间质子界 seven-dimensional space, the proton world. This is a space where the proton can be seen. The proton is one of the elementary particles forming the nucleus of the atoms. It has the positive electron. Its electricity is equal to the electron, but the mass is 1,836 times of that in the electron. In this space, the people can have the perspective as far as their eyesight can reach. It seems that the people are wearing the infrared glasses and can see what is behind a certain object. For instance, they can see the jewels and gold under the ground. They can see the people's inner organs. They can see the flowing water under the ground. In the three-dimensional world, the people can only see the branches, leaves, and fruits. However, the people in the proton world can see the worms climbing on the tree. The beauties in the eyes of the three-dimensional world are simply skeletons in the eyes of the people in the proton world. 八维空间一光子界 eight-dimensional space, the photon world. It is the space where the rays are beyond the 400 to 700 millimeters wavelengths. The photon is the elementary particle of the light. It has certain energy, which changes to the wavelengths. The shorter the wavelength is, the more energy it has. Many lights are invisible to the human eyes. Only those who have certain level of energy can see them. In this space, the people can have the perspective farther than their eyesight range. They can see through the substances with high density, strength, and energy. The objects will not show up in their original forms. Instead, they will show up in the form of light in different colors. The substances with low density, strength, and energy are invisible just like the molecule in the air. The worldly people busy in the world are just clusters of light-moving molecules. On the contrary, the self-improving people will emit the visible light with different colors based on the strength of their composure and psychokinesis. 九维空间一光速圈 nine-dimensional space, the light speed circle. The space where the light can reach within 1 second is called the light speed circle. The people in this space can have the remote viewing of things in the distance where the light will reach in 1 second. For instance, though the person is in Africa, he can clearly see his family members living in Asia. All the people living within the scope of 1 second light traveling can be seen by the people in the light speed circle. 十维空间超光速圈 ten-dimensional space, the super light speed circle. The space where the light cannot reach within 1 second is called the light speed circle. The people in this circle can have the trans-space remote viewing. They can see all the scenes beyond the Milky Way system and the Rotary River system, in particular the life situation of the celestial beings in the 1,000-year world and 10,000-year world. 十一维空间一分子界 11-dimensional space, the molecule world. It is a space where the thinking energy of the nature shown by the molecules can be seen. The molecule is the smallest particle that can regain the chemical attributes of the original substances and can exist independently. The people in this space can see the nature of each type of molecules. For instance, the blood of an average people in the eyes of the worldly people is seen by the people living in the molecule world as a fully grown person who has his look and personality. If there are 2 drops of blood with 1 drop belonging to a dog and the other to a cow, we ordinary people cannot tell which is dog and which is cow. However, the people living in the molecule world can judge them. They even know the form of the grass by seeing the grass seed. 十二维空间微观世界 12-dimensional space, the micro world. It is a space where people can ride a horse in the nanometer space. The tiny particle seen by an ordinary person in the microscope is a large universe system in the eyes of the people living in the micro world, which includes the sun, mountains, rivers, animals, plants, and the park residences for the people. They can build thousands of beautiful villages on a grain of sand. 十三维空间法界 13-dimensional space, the law world. It is a space where the people can see the energy which causes the matters to change. For instance, the energy that drives the combination of the sperm and egg which later grow into a perfect body. The people in the law world can only see the energy flow, the magnetic line of force, the rays of all kinds, and the waves of all kinds are energy flows. They know very clear which place has good or bad feng shui, and who has strong or weak life power. 十四维空间滞留信息间 14-dimensional space, the detention information space. It is the space where the information will stay without diffusion in a short time. Any motion of the matters will leave the information that will not disappear in a short time behind them. All the matters are just like the photographic films, able to record correctly what has happened around them. The detention information space refers to the space which is able to show what has happened. Some police dogs can trace the whereabouts of the people by following the smell they have left days or even months ago. The people with the Buddha eyes can, according to the detention information left by the object's movement, show what happened, for instance, 10 years ago. For example, the room has been the venue of the murdering cases, how it happened, and who the murderer was. 15维空间超世界 15-dimensional space, the supertime world. It is a space where the people can get rid of the time constraint, follow the time numerical axis, and see what will happen or what has happened in a certain place in the future or in the past. For instance, the scenes in the beginnings of universe origin, human origin, and life origin. The scenes where the dinosaurs were dominating the earth. The scenes of Adam and Eve living in the Eden. The scenes of the Great Flood in Noah's time. Or the life scenes when the earth is controlled by the biorobots in the future. 16维空间宏观世界 16-dimensional space, the macro world. The big universe is the macro world. For the people living in the macro world, the Earth universe where we are is just a particle, the solar system is simply a molecule, the sun is the nucleus, the Earth, the Mercury, the Mars, and other 6 planets are just the electrons revolving around the nucleus. 17维空间时间隧道 17-dimensional space, the time tunnel. The time network composed of the negative and positive time and dotted the universe space is called the time tunnel. The time tunnel runs through all tangible objects. Each celestial body has its own time tunnel, and each person has it too. Once entering the time tunnel, the time no longer goes ahead like the ticking clock. Instead, the time is fixed and static. It is not like the calendar watch showing the past and future. Instead, the time has become the numerical axis with the 2 ends